You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of this year's It horror film Obsession, and thank God an It horror film lives up to the tag. In recent years, so I've gone on at length about how horror is the genre in movies over the last 15 years. It's where it's at as far as great movies and imaginative scenarios, incredibly interesting use of soundtracks and cinematography and emotional themes and so on. But the last few years, they've also thrown up a lot of It movies where, I mean, Monkey's Paw, or whatever it was called, was my number one worst film of last year. I think I might have given it a 1 out of 10, if that. It was absolutely abysmal. But even ones that are good, like, say, Sinners or Weapons, I only gave a 7 out of 10 to. And Longlegs as well, I probably gave a 6 out of 10 to. I didn't really rate any of those It horrors, but Obsession I certainly do. And it's become a cause celeb and contender for Film of the Year on some level by breaking the Blair Witch's record. So on a budget of $750,000 it cost to shoot Obsession. Its current box office globally is $430 million. So what's Supergirl at? I could have told them what was going to happen with Supergirl before they even shot 1 second of it. So Supergirl has a budget of up to $186 million and has made $120 million, which is a mind-blowing difference to costing $750,000 and making $430 million for what is an extremely indie film. Like, one thing of the many that I adore about this film is they get such compelling excitement and intrigue out of people just talking in rooms. They don't need to spend virtually any money on this because it's all done for them by the script and the themes and the acting. So we get this sad sack indie loser guy in a small town America called played by Michael Johnston, who plays Bear. He's just this really painfully shy guy. I don't know any of these actors from anything at all, really. He's the star. He's the male lead, and a very controversial character, as is the main sort of setup of the film. So he's in a group of friends with Indy Navarrete, who's the female lead of the film, who he's got an incredible crush on that's painful. She plays Nikki, and then there's Cooper, who plays Ian, who's his best mate, and Megan, who plays Sarah, Megan Lawless, who does look familiar, actually. She plays the fourth of this quadret of people. I might have made the word quadret up, by the way. And the Bear character is hopelessly in love with the Nikki character, but in a painfully, awkwardly shy way. And that's the opening of the film, and I don't do cringe very well. And boy, is he cringe. So the film opens with him delivering this unbelievably over-the-top soliloquy on how much he loves Nikki. And then it pans back, and you can see it's the other two from the group of four listening to him virtually in horror that he said these words out loud. And as does he. He's like, well, you told me to say everything I'm feeling and so on. So Nikki is looking at going away in a few weeks to uni or to live her life somewhere else. But he's desperate to tell her how he feels, and she gives him every opportunity to do so, which he then manfully avoids to do. Even when she flat out asks him, he still manages to avoid the subject. And even though I hated his character for that, it is a relatable scenario, and not one that I would have been avoiding when I was in my early 20s either. I would have definitely been him, and I hate it. I hate the fact that would have been me. But he's so painful about it all. So what happens, and I also love the way that this film has such a simple premise, and it's the monkey paw premise, really, which is probably the most overused trope in horrors, which is artifacts causes behaviour or supernatural elements to enter your lives. which might be good at first but end up not being good. So he finds this wish stick from a charm bracelet seller shop, very sort of Gremlins sort of vibe, where the guy goes to buy the first gremlin, but a bit more sort of middle class downtown. And he buys this wish stick, and he makes a wish, which is that she will obsessively love him. And he snaps the stick, and guess what? Her entire personality changes, and she becomes obsessed with him. Now, to his credit and the film's credit, he doesn't initially overplay what's happening. He is also quite appalled by it. But she's super hot and he's in love with her, and he does end up taking advantage of the situation whilst not quite fully believing that it could possibly be true, because obviously it's ridiculous. And they did have a very close relationship, and she had sort of hinted at more. And I love the fact that, like, the number one greatest thing about this film is it's virtually entirely about the truth about relationships between men and women. And that's thrown up grist to the mill as to whether he is being super abusive, or, you know, how bad he is at not being able to express how he feels, and so on. But once that wish stick is snapped, she just becomes more and more obsessed by him, and they form a relationship. But the other two friends know that there's something deeply wrong. Her behaviour also becomes incredibly erratic. This is probably the first half of the film, so it survives just on writing and dialogue, really, for the first entire half of the film, without even needing horror. I am a massive fan of social horror, even though I don't like watching it because it makes me cringe and feel embarrassed. But I think why the 70s was such a heyday for horror films, whether it's stuff like the Amityville Horror or The Exorcist, where your son is going through this, or your daughter's going through this incredible thing that's happening to her, and she's going for these horrific medical tests and so on, where the supernatural elements hadn't come in, but the horror was daily life. And the same with the Amityville Horror, where the idea of you having your dream home and then things sliding really, really badly. And I think that's the case here, because there's a lot of horror in the interactions that is just social embarrassment. But also, there's this, I thought one of the best themes of the film is how men want their perfect girlfriend, for that perfect girlfriend to be obsessively in love with them. And if that perfect girlfriend was obsessively in love with them, they wouldn't want them. It's this paradigm. There's a lot of truth in the way it deals with how men and women think about each other and what's going on. And there are some nice sort of additions to detail in the four friends' relationships that broaden what's happening. But gradually she becomes more and more psychotic. He also kind of understands that maybe the girl that he's got isn't quite the girl that he's got. I won't blow any of that out of the water, but it's not a film that relies too much on surprises. It definitely doesn't rely on gore or violence or sex or swearing, even though all those things do appear very sporadically through the film. It's mainly people hanging out and being realistically behaved and well-drawn, deeply drawn as characters. And I'm a big fan of going gonzo, and certainly the final third of this film goes completely gonzo in the best possible way. Everyone's good. It's hard for Michael Johnson to be good as Bear because he's not a charitable character, and I imagine that he's thrown up a lot of tension from women as to his behaviour, and obviously he is at some point in the film definitely aware that he is using the body of this woman, but at the same time he's not like criminally negligent. He is obsessively and painfully in love with somebody, and he can't quite believe his luck, but at the same time he is kind of off-put by the whole thing and doesn't really know how to deal with it. And you could argue that he should just walk away, but he gets himself in too deep. And when he's challenged about it, he doesn't want to let it go because that's his dream girl. And it gets worse and worse and worse. Each time it ratchets up, you don't think it can go any higher, but it does. And there are some wonderful scenes where the best performances, obviously, Inde Navarrete as Nikki, as the girl in it. She's magnificent. It did, I guess, a little bit remind me of the Smile film, where, you know, there's this gradually exploding menace throughout the film with very strong female lead that bears the brunt of it. Although, really, she's not in much of the film, if you've watched the film, but her performance is excellent, and it gets very wide-ranging. She's got this very unsettling knack of blowing up in the space of a millisecond and then coming right back down to being normal, Stepford wife, perfect girlfriend, a few seconds later, which gives the film a lot of great moments. There's some fantastic moments, like when she loses it at a party, reading out this very, very disturbing poem she's written about the guy, which alludes to her boyfriend being her brother in a sexual nature, which is really disturbing. And then she just loses it. And honestly, when the other girl starts to relay how she feels about Bear to him, there is a wow moment, which is just like, you're just sitting there going, what the hell is going on? No way. So this is great. I thought this was great. A lot of people might be going in expecting a full-blown horror from the off and not such a sort of relationship-based character study for half the film, but it really does deliver on the horror basis once it gets into the second half. I thought this was outstanding. I thought this is definitely up there as probably the joint best film I've seen this year, and a star-making performance from Indy. So I will give Obsession, finally a horror movie that lives up to the It horror hype, a 9 out of 10.